you know,
Whatever
whatever
document.
you're, yeah.
Okay.
there's,
perfect.
keep scrolling.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
yes.
Oh, can I get my, I'm gonna get my purse and stuff.
Oh.
Mhm. Sorry, it's a million things, figuring out my life.
Oh, from both ways during that time of day. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you again. Is this
Yes.
yours too?
No, that's just kind of there.
Okay.
Yeah.
great. And if you don't mind shutting the door on the way out.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome everybody. And I'm sorry, I don't know your first name.
Brian.
Brian.
Yeah.
Oh, Brian.
Brian.
Yes.
I've been on the west side of the mountains since I started, so I just
Yeah.
recently moved over.
Evidently, I've seen your paperwork.
Yes.
So good.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, that's wonderful.
Well, I don't know anybody else here because I'm shy.
Oh,
Kathy, I'm Des. Yeah, I, okay, yeah,
Yes.
you know me. Yeah, I know you.
What's it?
Was it? All right, good. Hi. And that's Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
I'm Brian.
Yes,
I
And-
usually on,
and this is Kathy.
you're always on Zoom. I see you on Zoom.
I'm on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Camera's always on.
Okay, so very quickly, starting January 1st, compliance, which means the Department of Licensing, when they come into audit, they're going to require, you know, when you have a listing, you have to have a listing agreement and all the documentation. They're going to require that you have a buyer's agreement on every buyer that you represent. Now, you should be doing that, but now it will be audited. And so some of the things that they're going to change, this is effective January 1st, is this is what the Senate has done. It's required for real estate firms to enter into written brokerage services agreement with a buyer as soon as reasonably practical after commencing real estate brokerage services for the buyer. So what are services?
Showing houses. Even sending stuff. Just even meeting. stuff.
Right. So if you're counseling like a first-time home buyer, you're providing brokerage services. So all of those things that we do now, when they sign this, they become your client and your fiduciary responsibility. As Russ was talking, sometimes we have to be careful because we start acting like it, then we are in that fiduciary responsibility. So they're changing the dual agent to a limited dual agent, because if I am looking out for my seller's best fiduciary responsibility, but I'm also looking out for my buyer's best fiduciary responsibility, I can't share why this is their best price. I can't share that, oh, they have another 25 grand from grandma. I can't share that. So they're changing that to a dual agent as to a limited dual agent. And remember, whenever we have a deal in the house, Russ is a dual agent. And so they're just changing and being more, they're thinking they're being more transparent.
So what is limited on it though?
Well, because I cannot share with you 100% of what my other client.
Isn't that the way it's always been now?
Oh, yes, that's why they've
They
named,
worded it that way?
that's why they've changed it from just dual to limited.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think it's just a kind of a clarification that you're a dual agent, but in limited capacity.
that's right.
You can't say this. Otherwise, you can say, hey, I can tell you anything. No, I can't.
Right.
Yeah. And personally, I've been involved in one and it was very distasteful. That's probably why I've never done it in 13 years. That's just never been anything. It's not that I'm not open and honest. It's just that I really felt like our broker, it wasn't there for us. It was somebody else. It was a local and whatever. Okay. So they're changing that, giving buyers and sellers a clear choice whether to consent to an individual broker acting as a limited dual agent. That really hasn't changed, but it's just being more transparent about that. I'll pull these out. This RCW 1886 point whatever that 030. I'll pull and we'll go over that in detail as we get closer. Ensuring complete transparency with regard to compensation by requiring that real estate firms disclose to all parties any compensation offered to the firm by another party or another real estate firm. I don't know that we don't already do that, but they're just saying that this is supposed to do it more. Modernizing and simplifying the pamphlet, and we're all got our fingers crossed that will be less than 9 pages. When I hand it to people, I explain, you know, the agent, the buyer broker, or the listing broker, and the dual agency. I explained that, and I said, if you have any issues with insomnia, this is the time to read it. And I probably shouldn't.
Stop. The first few pages where they gave the definitions, that's pretty much all you have to really read.
Yeah,
And that, those first 2 or 3 pages pretty much clarifies what the rest is.
yeah. See, you probably know that form better than I do. Okay, so they're working on revisions and training materials and a class and all of that stuff. But last week, I think, or the week before, I alluded to the fact that if you're not already doing it, start getting in the habit. And in command, if it's just your you have nothing to do with the listing, then they do have that there's a place to put that buyer broker agreement. Let's see, I don't care about that. There are, and I have not looked at this. Ashley would have been all over this, but I'm not Ashley. She is much better than I am. Okay, so there are new resource pages on Northwest MLS. There's going to be a place where we can list associate organizations like our inspectors, our cleaning people, the staging, the whatever. And I thought that's kind of cool. You know, I know that Tom and I don't work with buyers that closely anymore, and primarily all I have is land listings, so we don't use it. But our preferred home inspector, I don't know if any of you have used him or not, but we've used Randy the entire time that we've been here. And I know that because we used him every single time, you know, that the client chose him, that whenever we made a phone call, we got a call right back. So I think this is a wonderful way for you to work with those people that provide services for us and for our buyers and our sellers. Wonderful way.
Quick question on
Yes.
When we have a buyer that wants to do an inspection, we can't recommend, we have to like give them a couple
Yes.
and they choose.
That's correct. I
Double check.
yeah, and it's, you know, when I have my 3 or 5 or however many we have in our office anymore, you know, and you hand it to them and you say, these are all really good. No, I don't ever do that. I'm just kidding. Okay, inclusion and diversity resources. I'm not really sure what this is, but I know it has to do with all the new stuff that's coming out. But I thought the industry organizations Lois in our office just went through a long class on statistics and all of that. And she came back and we could not shut her up. And by that, I mean, and Lois, if you hear this, it was so awesome, all the different things that we can do. So I would encourage you to take a look at this. It's the 30th and September 12th, and sign up for it. It really makes you sound incredibly intelligent as you are. So I wanted to kind of point that out, and it covers all of these things. They have been doing that now for a very long time. Labor Day is coming up. They're going to be having classes, 3-hour classes that you can have credit for. And this will be, I'll include this in the notes, but this particular one, there's a couple of these that are really good. Because I work with a lot of new people, sometimes we've been doing it our way for a long time. And so I asked somebody something, did they cover this? And so I've signed up for a few of these just so that I can audit and make sure that the information that I give is correct. Now, I thought this was fun. There's no credit, but they're starting to do 1-hour live webinars. And it's just kind of like information burst. And if you need more information, then you can go. So anyways, and I think, yep, that's it on that one. So we will be going over the buyer's agreement multiple times between now and January 1st. Okay, so she's not here today. Sarah Layton had a customer, and it was in Ephrata, and it was with a builder, and they had their contract. And it has just been a real can of worms. And so Ashley and Russ got involved and have worked with her to go through it. And so what I wanted to do today is to take a look at, and this is I've seen better examples, but this is something that we are going to start doing from now on. If you have to implement other forms, other contract addendums that are not from what we use, then for brokers that are under 2 years, then you must and if I don't catch it and Ashley doesn't catch it, you must have Russ get involved. And the reason for that is when developers and builders, and they build a few homes and they use our stuff, and then they say, well, gee, that really didn't work for me. And then they go to an attorney, and then an attorney gets involved. And it's just crazy, some of the things that I've seen. The word onerous, when you're writing a contract, do you know what the legal term onerous means?
Not good.
If you're on the other end, onerous means it's really written for the person that they're protecting. I'm going to show you one of the most onerous contracts I've ever seen in my life. And I don't want to besmirch Parkside Estates. I really don't, because they have a very nice product and a price range that's very necessary. So when you go to them, many times in the Northwest MLS and the Associated Docs, they will have documents that you have to look at and or use or have your buyers use. So I want to take just a look at this so that we can go through and see what this is. This is really awesome. First thing they did is, except for the street address, they gave you their utilities and their phone numbers for contact. So that makes it really nice. And they've told you that within 48 hours, which I thought was very generous, that you had that time to convert. but you want your buyers to do that prior to that. And I apologize, I wasn't able to get a blank one. And so this has buyers' information all over. And if I haven't caught everything, I apologize in advance. So here is the Form 34 that was uploaded. And it was the listing broker had this, and so they used our form. And so here is the things that were written on it. That the seller agrees to pay the buyer. And I thought this was cool. On a brand new construction, they're saying up front that they'll give you a $7,000 credit to go toward anything, closing costs, discounts, prepaids. And then the earnest money shall be from 2 to 10 days. You know, that you need to have one date on that. Charges and assessments levied before but due after closing to be paid by the seller at in full by the seller at closing. So that's all what we expect. Yes, it is. But they were doing things specifically that they wanted to have the buyers know. Closing date shall be and in the blank form, it just had a blank thing, but this was filled out. And will this not incur addition, and this will not, oh, I'm sorry. This is one we put in because we added it because you'll see in the contract that if the closing date is not within 10 days after occupancy, you know, where the county goes in or the city, whoever the permit is through, and says, okay, it's habitable, then what the builder is saying that your closing date has to be 10 days. Well, this was almost to the point of occupancy, and she had a financing addendum, and there's no way that you can do financing in 7 days. I mean, that's how close it was, you know, within 7 to 10 days. So this is the part that I had her add. Okay, legal description. And here we go. All right, so this is just the beginning part of it. If we look at this right here, this is the very first clue. In the event of any conflict or inconsistency between the terms of this addendum and the PSA, the terms of this addendum shall supersede the language of the PSA and the addendum shall control. That was the first thing that when Russ got involved, he took out. So this will tell you right away. And when you get these, you have to read everything and understand it. And if you don't, then you need to call somebody to help you with this because it's really important. Okay, so that was the number one thing right there. The agreement constitutes the entire understanding, all prior and contemporaneous understandings, whether written or oral. Anyways, it just goes into that. Now this one is
I have a question like that.
Sure.
I thought that with our licenses, we were legally allowed to fill out forms that were given to us from the Northwest MLS, and that's pretty much the extent of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're presented something from another attorney or, you know, like
Mhm.
this was drafted by a different attorney,
Mm-hmm.
do we even have rights to represent a contract like this?
No, we don't. And that's what I found out.
Yeah.
Because I have reviewed a lot of them where they say, this is an addendum. Well, FHA has one. This is an amendment that goes with a contract, but it's not as onerous as this contract. So if we have anything that has to be included and you have questions about it, then absolutely. Russ is the arbiter on that. But and probably in reading anything, I'll probably say I need to check with Russ. And I'll show you an example of what the final resolution was. It's still an existing document. At the time of signing the agreement, buyer is making earnest money deposit, personal or certified, to be held by the escrow, deposited within 2 business days of mutual. Remember on the first page, it said 2 to 10 days, but this it says it supersedes everything. So already you got it. Yeah. Mutual accepts unless otherwise stated herein, in this document. The earnest money deposit shall be non-refundable after 10 days. This is a new construction. The house isn't even completed. You haven't even done your final walkthrough. And so this is a pure definition of onerous. It's all about the contractor.
Not only onerous, but it almost is trying to fool you. And the fact that the earnest money said 2 to 10, and now it's saying it's due on 2 and 10, you're done.
And then you're done, and yeah, we got your money, there's nothing you can do.
They would not accept our 22 RA, which was an attorney review.
Oh,
They did not want our 22T. Well, sorry. Anyways, it gets better. So a buyer authorizes a broker or escrow agent holding the earnest money to release such funds to the seller as provided to them. So, I mean, okay, so we're doing, if you had a scoreboard and this is the seller and this is the buyer, we're just checking. I mean, if there's nothing there to protect the buyer.
Sounds like they needed some.
Yes, it doesn't it? Yeah. Forfeiture, seller elects to retain as its sole remedy the totals. Isn't that wonderful? They're so generous. They're not going to ask for any more money. Okay. In the event the seller shall, for any reason whatsoever, fail or be able to convey the property as otherwise close the transaction in accordance with the term and conditions of the agreement, or within the time required, either buyer, as buyer's sole remedy, or seller may elect to rescind the agreement. That means as if it was never there. In writing, and all monies paid pursuant shall be refunded. Well, that's nice. But I just see attorney all over this. So this whole thing right here is, I don't know if it's supposed to make you feel good, but it doesn't. And we go on to the next section. Closing. This transaction shall close within 10 days following the issuance of certificate of occupancy, unless extended as provided by paragraph B of this section 3. Okay, so gee, I need to know what that is. The seller may, at its option, extend the closing date without penalty until the latter of the following, up to 20 days. And then it goes into all the things that it can have. The buyer. If buyer's not prepared to purchase the property for any reason on the closing date, seller may, at the seller's sole discretion, terminate or extend up to maybe 30 days. Or, let me see, is there another or? And there's, if the buyer has to extend the closing date, there's a $200 fee, but not on the seller. So
not only a $2 fee, but $2.
$200, yeah,
For
each day that they request. Okay.
It does really sound like they need money.
Yeah. So I saw that in there and I said, has your buyer read this contract? And she said, yes, they feel very comfortable with it. And I said, well, I don't feel comfortable with that because they're ready to give occupancy. And this was like 10 days ago. So it's probably got that certificate of occupancy. And that's why we put that in the addendum, that form 34, closing date shall be that date, and there'll be no expense to the buyer. Anyways, this is something that's really fun. Third-party inspections. This shall this section supersedes a Form 35 or 35F. This is what this is saying right here. Buyers shall notify the seller of the date and time, which shall be conducted no more than 7 days, but no less than 2 days prior to the orientation walkthrough unless otherwise directed by the seller. Right here, inspection report is to be provided to the seller within 48 hours of the buyer's receipt.
They're just basically throwing MLS out the door and saying.
Well,
We're not gonna
all
follow
of
your
the
rules.
attorneys for the state Washington Board of Realtors, yes. It just reminds me, when you involve an attorney, they just want to, they want to fix it. Okay, so the inspection for this property, they got mutual on Thursday. It was inspected on Saturday. And the inspector said, I've been doing this for a long time. I was a contractor. The siding is on sideways. It is not on the way it's supposed to be. And your first heavy rain, there's no protection to the building. And so then they went back with that information. First, I'll show you what happened, what transpired. But they said, no, the siding's on properly. And so Russ has to hire a neutral third party that is not to either side to go out and say, dude.
Deciding it on, okay.
So as we go through this whole thing, when you get other documents that are not approved by the Northwest MLS, then you have to let that broker know, look, I've got to go through our designated broker to get this approved.
It's like a big red flag.
Oh, well, oh yeah, it was. The unfortunate thing, and I'm embarrassed to say, I didn't do enough red flags for Sarah, and poor Ashley got stuck with going through all of this. So as you look through this, and I'll send this out in the notes, and I promise I'll do that tomorrow. I'll get these out. As it goes through, it's just, there are so many. So what I want to show you is, and I have to go back here and find it. Let me look. No, that was the entire one. Okay, so I don't know how many of you know this or not, but the first of the month, my brother's wife passed away, and she'd been battling cancer for 9 years. And so during all of that, and I had the variant go and be with my brother in California. So I'd just been a wreck this month, and that's no excuse. But when I saw this, I was at the end. I had been in bed for 6 days, and I saw this at the end, and I did not give it. I should have sent it immediately right over to Russ and say, I'm sick. This isn't right. But I gave her some advice, and she made some changes. Ashley got in here. So then we're talking about it. She went through, and all the things to protect the buyer are all, do you see it's referencing the addendum AH and the provisions, this section shall not apply. And we went through and we identified everything. And this was going to be on a Form 36. I'm sorry, Form 34. And these were all of the things. We had 10 and then we took out 4. But this is what Ashley finally memorialized. And then Russ got involved. What happens on a Form 34 when we write these many changes? Say it louder.
You're becoming a lawyer.
Yes, you're acting as a lawyer. Lawsuit, lawsuit, lawsuit. If you have to write this many things, you need to get Russ involved. And so that we can take care of it and make sure that your client is really protected. If you are representing a development, we're going into one where the first thing is 25 houses. And they're all about $1 million. And I was looking at his paperwork that he gave to another broker that has to be with the listings. And we really seriously have to go through and take a look at that. That's not what we're gonna do. We're negotiating that right now. But what ended up being, and I've often said that Russ should have been an attorney. He has that crafty mind like an attorney. And oh, I didn't take out the top part of it there. I'm sorry. So this is what he did as a designated broker, and you realize that all of our deals he is responsible for. So he wrote, per Form 35R, paragraph 5, additional time for inspections are needed in the language from the inspection for clarity. And so then what he did is that was so that we could extend the inspection another 5 days to get that expert out. Everything else was fine. But would you recommend your buyer buy a house where the siding is on the wrong way? No. First of all, that would look weird. Okay, so then this is what he put. Both buyer and seller hereby acknowledge Form 35 is an integral, legal, and binding part of the entire agreement to this purchase of the subject property. Both buyer and seller agree Form 35 and consequent Form 35R supersedes Addendum AH to the purchase and sale agreement, paragraph 1, addendum controls. So that's the very first thing that he did, was just to pull that out and say our inspection addendum supersedes. And so therefore they had nowhere in there about inspection and expanding it to get another expert in a different field. Then he said, per Form 35R, paragraph 5, the buyer shall have 5 days to obtain additional. Oh, this should be just, we won't tell Russ he made a mistake. Paragraph 5, that should just be 35. The buyer shall have 5 days to obtain the additional inspections as recommended by the inspector. An initial inspection period shall be extended. Then inspector comments from the inspection report, pillar to post inspections. Oh my gosh, and they are, yeah. So here is what they said. And hardy board plank siding is installed incorrectly to manufacturer specification of 1/8 of an inch separation at all joints and piece of flashing behind it. Consider partnering with a contractor about possible resolution. So this is what it came up to. And by all counts, this is more writing than we should be doing. But it was to save. The people loved the house. They could have, it was the first house that they could afford. And they were in a down payment assistance program. So every penny mattered. And so Russ was able to save that. And also Jeff Hallman's group has worked with this builder before. And that was a really good bridge. So when you're working with a brand new one, we have a wonderful resource here. Send it out. Has anybody worked with this builder before? And these their addendums, and get any feedback on that. So the bottom line is the new rule is going to be, if you're under 2 years and you have any document that's not a part of the Northwest MLS, then you will need to bring Russ into it. Last week, Kathy, who's a very experienced broker, sent me an email and she said, this is an area that I have never done before. Would you just review this contract before I have my buyers see it? And that's what we're here for, is to be able to, if you're over 2 years, that doesn't mean, gee, 2 years, Maria just had or is about to have a 2-year anniversary. That doesn't mean we gave her a pill and now she knows everything.
I call Marsha all the time, Marsha.
And that's what we're here for. If it's real technical and it's about the contract, that's when I rely on Tom. My husband was in construction forever, but they were giant constructions, and he was a arbitrator and a mediator, and our whole consulting business was based on mediation, but we called it intervention, which was always appropriate. And so that's what this is for. Now, any questions that you have on this? I just wanted to show an example of this. I've seen other addendums, like if you do an FHA, you have to sign one of their addendums, but they don't ever say anything like this supersedes everything. I mean, it's just for their lending purposes. And so, and I have seen where other builders will have, there's a really, agent, Jeff Hallman's group does one out on Sierra, and they have certain documents they want you to use, but they are very, they work hand in hand with the Northwest MLS forms. Okay. So there you see it.
Thanks, Marsha.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you, Emily, out there. I wanted to look and make sure. Nope, no questions. All right. That's it.
Thanks.
We're even out of here early.
Thank you, Marsha.
You're welcome.